So that feeling of rolling away from a manual and confirming in the footage that you didn't scrape can be a pretty amazing feeling. But the thing is with manuals, that's just a very, very small part of the experience. There are thousands of attempts that go behind it that can be pretty stressful, but there are things we can do to step up our mani game. So in this video, I'm going to be sharing with you a bunch of exercises and different things you can do on your board that I've learned over the last 22 years of skating. Years training skaters and analysing the biggest pros in the mani game, Day One, Joe Brzezinski, John Dilo. I'm going to be sharing all of that with you in this video. So you might look at a manual and you might think, mate, what is that? It's just a little two-wheeled balance on a little wooden toy. There's nothing special about that. But if we break it down, we'll find out that it's actually a battle against the laws of the universe. And that might sound like I'm over-exaggerating, but I'm really not, because when you're in a manual, you are literally fighting forces from all angles, from outside of you, things like gravity, friction, a little crack in the ground that's going to throw you off and send you off balance. You're fighting forces on the inside as well, things like your muscles pulling you in different directions, the momentum of your arms swinging about, and a bunch of other stuff as well. But luckily you've got a load of different bodily systems in place that are going to help you handle these forces and stabilize whilst you're in the mani. So before we get to all the exercises, let's break down in detail, step by step, what's actually going on when we're manualing. Alright, so first off, as we're rolling up to do the manual, we're going to be looking away at the mani pad. Now when we look away, that means that we can't use vision to tell us how to actually move our bodies. Vision gives us so much information on how to move, but when we take that away because we're looking at the mani pad, we've got to rely more on these two systems called the vestibular system, a system within your inner ear that tells you how your head's moving in space and the speed that it's moving, and something called proprioception as well, which is like a full body sense of where your body is in space, how it's moving, the angles of the joints, the speeds of the joints. So now we're about to pop into the mani and we're going to be landing either on the front leg or the back leg, depending on the trick that we're doing. Now a big weight shift is going on here right now, and this is the key. So you're shifting your weight from, let's say we're doing a nose mani, from the back leg into the front leg. Now that might seem pretty simple, but you'd actually be surprised by how many people struggle with really shifting their weight from that one side to the other. Okay, so we're finally in the manual and it's now that shit's gonna get hectic. So stabilizing in a mani is a full body thing, from the head all the way down to the toes. You've got your core acting as a solid block for the rest of your body to push off and to be able to create force off. If you imagine shooting a cannon out of a canoe, obviously it's not going to work because that canoe isn't stable, and it's the same with the rest of your body. If you're pushing off it but your core isn't stable, that force that those limbs are creating isn't going to be effective. So it's that solid block in the middle, but it also creates movement depending on the trick that you're doing, and also probably more importantly resists movement as well. So it resists rotation, it resists lateral movement, and it's basically just providing you a support structure as you're actually doing the mani. Now if we get deep into mani analysis mode, we'll see that it's actually like this chicken head. At least it kind of is, because you break down a lot of clips of the best in the game, you'll notice that from the waist down, they stay relatively still, and it's the upper body that's moving around to compensate for those changes in force that your body needs to stabilize, but in a way that allows below the waist to stay more stable. And that kind of makes sense because not only are both feet stuck to the board, but you don't really have much movement in a mani, because if you do move a lot, you're either going to tap or you're going to scrape. And then you get to the end of the mani pad, you pop out, you stomp it like an absolute boss, and then check the footage back and realize that you scraped. Oof. Alright, so you've done your mani, but like, how has all of that shit even just happened? How has that worked? Like I said, there are a load of different systems at work, things like your muscles, your joints, proprioception, and your nervous system that are constantly working during the mani to actually keep you stable. So they all work in feedback loops where they're getting information from outside and also inside to then make any necessary adjustments to keep you stable. So for example, if you're in that mani and you hit a little crack, it's going to jerk you forwards. Maybe your core needs to brace to resist rotation. Maybe certain joints need to change angles, or other muscles need to contract or relax to keep you stable. But it's just this constant loop, thousands of times a second, between these systems and whatever's going on internally and externally to actually keep you balanced. Alright, so regardless of whether you're Day One Song or Little Neville, the milkman's son who's just learned how to skate, you're dealing with the same forces. The difference is Day One's become an absolute boss master of these forces. He's got those feedback loops absolutely dialed, so any change in force, he can just react instantly without even thinking about it to stabilize himself and keep balance in the mani. But the big question is obviously, how do we train these systems to be on point and to actually balance more in our mannys? Well, number one, as always, you always hear me say this on this channel, it's skating. Skating is the number one thing you can do. Expose yourself to these forces in many different ways so you can actually learn how to stabilize them. Now, I've got a few different tips and skate tasks that are going to help you with mannys, which we'll get to soon. But there are a bunch of different resistance training exercises that are also going to be super useful to target those different systems and the different things that are going on, like the weight shift, dynamic stability, anti-movement, and proprioception, which are going to really help with manuals as well. So let's get to that. So starting off, we've got a side plank in the middle of the day of the Spanish summer. Terrible time to do this, but I'm doing it for you. So you better like and comment and subscribe and all that shit. Actually do that because it does help a lot of the algorithm boosting this channel. So if you want to help me out, that's one way that you can do it. All right, so anyway, coming down, you're gonna have your elbow directly under your shoulder. We want a straight line from the heels up to the head. And what you do with your feet is up to you. You can either go stacked or you can go one in front. I prefer one in front. From here, we're gonna come up and we're just gonna hold this position. We want the whole of the body to be parallel to an imaginary wall in front of us, and we're just gonna chill here. Once we've done one side, you'll go over and you'll repeat for the other side. All right, so next up, we're gonna be training anti-rotation, so the core's ability to resist rotational movement. We're going to use a band for this, so you want to tie it up to something that doesn't move, more or less around belly button height. You're going to step away from it, so I'll go a bit further back so I stay in the shot. Step away from it so there's tension in the band at the starting point. The feet are going to be at a distance that you would be in, say, when you're popping a trick or holding a manny. And we're going to start off with that flex in the knee and the hip. We're going to hold the band at belly button height, and we're just going to push straight out in front of us, resisting this movement. So we don't move anything once we're in this starting position. Boom, we're here, and we're here for the whole of the exercise. So we're going to push out, arms in line, hands in line with the belly button, and we're just going to hold that. So for this one, I want you to think core nice and stacked on top, so none of this. I want you to think rib cage on top of the pelvis. You've got a nice stack, head in line as well. And then once you've done one side, you'll swap over and you'll repeat for the other side as well. So we're going to move on to now a single leg version of that anti-rotation. You're going to set yourself up with tension in the band at the starting point. So from here, you'll come down into a kneeling position. So you're going to have the knee underneath the hip, and that front knee is going to be a little bit over those front toes. From here, you'll bring the band to the belly button position, and we're going to stand straight up. And now we're going to come down a little bit so that knee's hovering above the ground. Fucking dickhead, mate! Out here trying to teach pal off presses. Are you doing that? So we're going to come down into a kneeling position, knee under the hip. That front knee is going to be pretty much in line with the front of the toes, and you'll bring your hands to your belly button. So from here, we're going to come straight up, and now we're going to come slowly down again, but this time hovering above the ground with that back knee, and we'll push straight out in the same way as you did with the double leg one. Hold it with no movement, trying to stay upright, and then you'll come back. You'll swap sides, do the same shit. And then for each set, you can actually alternate with the line of the pull. So you can swap sides, for example, and do the same thing, but now with the band pulling you in the opposite direction. So next up, hitting the weight shift, we're gonna be standing on the one leg and we're gonna be jumping onto the other leg, imagining that we're landing in a nose manny. So I wanna see some flex in the knee and the hip, and we're trying to land nice and stable with the chest over the middle of that foot. We're gonna hold this until we're stable. So if you're still moving around, I want you to keep holding it until this point, and then you'll swap over, land on the other side in a switch nose manny now, and hold that one. So for the next level, we're gonna do 3 hops back and forth. It's gonna look something like this. You can imagine an imaginary line on the floor. You're gonna go boom, 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 and then hold that nose manny position. So for this one, you can speed up the hops as you feel more comfortable, to the point where you're like, nice and quick, and then we'll repeat for the other side. So you go boom, 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 and stabilize with that knee flex and hip flex position still until you're completely stable, and then repeat for the other side. Next one, this one's called a manny dance. So for here, we're gonna be going 2 hops on the one leg, boom, boom, and then swapping over into that opposite leg. Then we'll repeat for the other side. Go 1, 2, boom. Trying to land with that nice flex in the knee and the hip again as well. We're not letting the knee cave in at all in any of these moves. And then once you've done those 2, you'll do nollie and fakie mannies. So you'll do hops from the inside leg, 1, 2, swap to the outside leg, and then in the opposite direction too. So fakie, fakie, boom, and land. Trying to be nice and stable as well, holding each position until you're 100% stable and not going on to the next progression until you've done that. Now, one key thing we're gonna focus on when we're stabilizing in these exercises is we're gonna really try and do it from the waist up. So a lot of people have the tendency when they're trying to balance in exercises to do like this kind of stuff, all right? I want you to think that you're gonna have this foot stuck to the board. Now, it is useful to know how to stabilize in all of these different ways, but for these specific exercises, we're gonna be focusing on doing them just from the waist up as much as we can. So if you jump from one leg to the other and you feel like, whoa, I'm losing balance, I want you to do your best to stabilize from here up. So keep that foot and leg in a similar position and do the stabilizing from the waist up. So for the next exercise, the single leg 6-way rotations, you're gonna get something like a bottle or a foam roller, something that you can just lightly push into to activate the core a little bit. We're gonna be standing on the one leg, so nice flex in the knee and the hip, that same stance we've used for all the other exercises. And here we're gonna have that leg out as if we're balancing in a mani. You're gonna start off with the thing that you're holding out in front with your arms more or less fully extended. And from here, we're gonna rotate to one side. Now, the key is to not let the hips follow. So you're gonna find that as you rotate, especially in this direction, you're gonna want the hips to open up. I want you to think of separating the movement from the hips and the mid to upper back. So that rotation wants to come from the mid to upper back. So you'll turn to one side, you then turn to the other side, doing your best as well to stabilize from the waist up if you can. And then once you get there, you'll go diagonally up, so looking up at the bottle, and then coming down, diagonally down, looking down, and we'll go opposite corner up, and then we'll go opposite corner down. So you've got 6 points. You've got boom to the left, you got to the right, you've got diagonally up, you got straight down, diagonally up to the other side, and then diagonally down to the other side. And then you'll return to the middle, and that will count as one rep. Now, there are different progressions of these exercises, some more basic, some more advanced. I've covered a few different ones in different videos, some that I'll link down in the description below. But if you're looking for something that really lays out all of these progressions in a logical order for you to follow, along with a bunch of different exercises to not only hit manuals, but also pop, resilience, longevity, recovery time, they're gonna help you reduce injury risk and so much more, then check out the MBD Skate Performance Program. I've put a lot of work into it, thinking of all these different areas of skating and all of the different areas that we need to train to really be on point and skate at our best and feel at our best. So if you're interested in that, check it out, link in the description below. Okay, so the first task is gonna be just a little bit of an exploration where you're gonna play around with different foot positions. So let's say we're doing a mani. The back foot is much more important than the front, and same if we're doing a nose mani, the front foot is much more important. In a nose mani, we want to have the foot ideally closer to the bolts. The reason is because the further we go up this way, the longer the lever length is going to be, and the less force we'll have to apply to get movement. So longer lever means less force to get it to move. Shorter lever, we can apply that same force and get less movement. So the further you can go to the bolts, the better. And if you look at a lot of pros, you'll notice that most times their foot is relatively close to the bolts. So starting off, you're gonna start with your foot way at the end and just feeling what it's like to balance a nose mani with the foot right on the end of the nose like that. Then you're gonna go to that more optimal position that I spoke about. So that's having the feet much more closer to the bolts there, and just seeing like how that feels to stabilize. When you're practicing manis, I think it's much better to actually do it with some movement. So have some nice flat where you're not gonna get like destroyed by cracks, and just play around with those different positions. So do some manis with the feet in that more like optimal position and just see like how that feels to stabilize. Another thing you can do as well is explore like different pressure points, so more pressure on the toes, more pressure on the heel as well in different manis, and see just like which feels more comfortable. Now I heard Tom Astor say this as well. With nose manis, I feel like it's actually better to have a bit more pressure on like the toe of the board, although it is going to change depending on how you're actually moving. And then with manis, you'll notice that it's going to be a little bit better to maybe have some more pressure on the heel. So that's not a strict rule, and it is going to change depending on like how the mani's going and how you're moving. So for this skate task, we're going to practice doing different manis, but also like holding on to stuff at the same time. So find a wall, a quarter pipe, someone's forehead, whatever you want to hold on to. So I'm gonna start off by holding on nice and solid, a little bit of a flex in the knee and the hip, and the feet in that optimal mani position. You're gonna lift up and you're just gonna hold that position and just feel what it's like to have your center of gravity over that balance point of the wheels. Once that feels a little bit comfortable, now you can just start to like release your grip a little bit. So up to the point where you're literally just barely touching. You can move on to just like one finger almost and just like tapping as you need. As you start to lose the balance, just tap it a little bit. But basically you're just really paying attention to like how you actually need to position your body to be balanced. So the next skate task is literally just to get out there and skate. Try a load of different mannys on different obstacles, different types of mannys, and just play around with different foot positions, different feelings, and just really get used to all of the different forces that come at us when we are trying to actually do mannys. You can chuck some marbles and nails down on the mani pad too, just to challenge your stability a little bit more. Anyway, right now I'm going to go over some tips for nose mannys because I feel like those are the ones that people struggle with the most. When it comes down to doing nose mannys, I found like a few things are important. First off, you want to have your front foot relatively far up the board. So if you do ollies normally like down here, when you do nose mannys, you're ideally going to want to have it a little bit further up, just so it doesn't have to move so much to land in that optimal position. Next up, you're going to want to actually be able to nose mani at least a little bit on flat before you try and ollie into something, at least a few meters. So the next thing that you're going to want to mess around with the nose mani is different amounts of lean, either forwards or back. One thing I've noticed a lot of people learning to nose mani is they kind of just can't commit to it. They really struggle to get the right amount of weight on the front foot, and they always end up just tapping down instantly. So it's like boom and straight down. So I think something that's going to be really useful with that is overshooting how much weight you put on the front foot, so you literally fall forwards. That's going to help you come back around and like recalibrate somewhere in the middle, because you already know what it feels like to lean too far back. But if you show yourself what it feels like to lean too far forwards, then you should be like, all right, well, somewhere in the middle. I can lean somewhere in the middle, not a problem. That's either going to do something like that, or more likely, it's going to do something like this. And you're gonna stack it like that. Just pick an obstacle where it feels like you're not really gonna hurt yourself and you do feel comfortable falling forwards. So once you've then got a feeling of the two ends of the spectrum, what it feels like when you lean too far forwards and it results in a fall, and what happens when you lean too far back and you tap, you can then figure out some point in the middle. Hopefully, it's gonna look something like this. Now, one other thing you might find as well with nose manis is doing them onto really low obstacles like that curb can actually be pretty difficult. I feel with nose manis, it's actually easier a lot of the times to go onto something that's a little bit higher. That way you're not falling down so hard onto the nose, and it's just easier to balance. But you mess around with different obstacle heights and see what feels comfortable for you. So let me know what you thought about this video down in the comment section. And like I said, I'm gonna put a link for the MBD Skate Performance Program in the description, along with some other videos that you might like, that you might get some benefit from too. So that's it for this one. Peace.